It was supposed to be just a weekend getaway, a married couple's retreat in a rustic lodge somewhere deep in the Georgia woods, with lanterns instead of lights, logs crackling instead of street noise, and no signal bars on any phone unless you stood perfectly still on the wooden deck behind the cabin. The air smelled like pine needles and soft smoke. The way it clung to our skin made everything feel more raw, more stripped down. We weren't just city people out in nature. We were naked souls pretending to be whole. I came with my husband, Miles. We've been together almost 9 years. He's a good man, tall, solid, quiet. He's the type who listens more than he talks, carries the groceries, and never lets the gas tank hit empty. But lately, something between us had. The other couple, the Harrisons, arrived an hour after us. When I heard their SUV door slam and saw them walking up the gravel, my heart knocked once against my ribs, then again, harder. It was Devin. Yes, that Devin. Devin, with a smile that once made me skip lectures in college just to catch him outside the music hall. Devin, who I'd shared a single unforgettable kiss with after a Black History Month event sophomore year, only for us to part ways weeks later when his ex came back around. And now here he was, older, even more handsome, still tall with that smooth, midnight complexion, walking beside his wife, Layla, as if they hadn't just stepped out of a dream I'd forgotten I once had. "Y'all made it," Miles greeted, stepping down to help them with their bags. Devin and I locked eyes for a second. "Long time, huh?" he said under his breath when he passed me on the porch. I smiled but said nothing. My cheeks burned hotter than the fire pit we'd later gather around. That night, after dinner, the wine started flowing. The music got low, and Layla pulled out a card game meant to strengthen couple connections. Most of the questions were cute. Some got deeper. Then it got spicy. Tell your partner one place you'd want to be kissed that you haven't yet. Name a fantasy you've never said out loud. As the cards kept flipping, laughter filled the air, but my eyes kept drifting toward Devin. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. The way he looked at me over the flame, like he knew something, like he remembered it too, was enough to make my thighs press themselves tighter under the throw blanket. Later, when everyone slipped away to their cabins, the night stayed heavy. Miles had too much to drink and passed out early. I lay there, eyes open, heart racing. I slipped on my hoodie, pulled my braids into a bun, and crept out barefoot. I wasn't looking for anything, or maybe I was. I found him sitting by the fire pit, alone, hoodie on, head tilted back. "You couldn't sleep either," I whispered. He opened his eyes slowly and smiled. "I knew you'd come." No more words were needed. He stood, stepped to me, and pulled me into the shadows of the trees. We didn't rush. His lips found my neck, soft and slow, like they'd been thirsty for years. His hands didn't grab. They explored. I felt his breath on my collarbone, his teeth grazing, places I'd forgotten could ache. My back pressed to the bark of a wide oak tree as he moved lower, tasting me through thin layers of fabric. My legs trembled, not from fear, but from the guilt that tried, and failed, to stop me. When he finally slid into place, our bodies aligned like they were finishing a sentence we'd started years ago. The rhythm we found was silent and steady, the kind that doesn't need words. Just deep exhales and nails curling into shoulders. I didn't moan. I bit my lip. I let the air catch it for me. We were careful. We didn't speak each other's names, only shared gasps, quiet whimpers, and promises we both knew we could never keep. After, we stayed pressed together. I didn't move. I couldn't. "I shouldn't have come out here," I finally whispered. "But you did," he replied. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, but not from sadness, from surrender. When I slipped back into the cabin, Miles was still snoring. The moonlight caught his silhouette, and I paused just long enough to feel the stab of guilt. But even that didn't undo what had just happened beneath the trees. This retreat had just become something else entirely. Vault seekers. If your heart just skipped a beat, you're not alone. What would you do if the past came knocking? Not with flowers, but with fire. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to Top Stories Vault, and turn on that bell so you never miss a moment of temptation, truth, or betrayal. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a situation that tested your loyalty? This is just the beginning. Vault Seekers. The fire has only just been lit. I couldn't sleep. Not a wink. It's not that I felt bad for what happened. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But something about that kiss, those hands, the way he moved, everything felt too familiar, too right. The pull of desire had been there for so long. I'd just ignored it. I'd convinced myself I had no time for what I wanted. That's what marriage does, right? You give up pieces of yourself for the greater good of a life together. I wish I could say that's why I stayed. But the truth was, I wasn't staying for us. I was staying for him. Miles. He was everything I needed. Steady, loyal, reliable, everything I could ask for, except for the spark that came when Devin and I stood in the dark near the fire pit. I didn't want to admit it, but when I closed my eyes, it wasn't Miles I thought about. It was Devin. His touch was still fresh on my skin, like the heat of a flame you can't let go of. When the morning light crept through the window, I felt it again. The weight of what I'd done. I heard Miles moving in the next room, mumbling something about breakfast. I slipped into my clothes, straightened myself up, and tried to act normal. But nothing felt normal. Devin was the first one to arrive downstairs. He looked even better in the daylight. Muscular, with that defined jawline that made him look like he belonged on a magazine cover. He wasn't even trying. He was just there. So effortlessly attractive, but it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he carried himself, like he knew what he was capable of, like he had power, not just in his body, but in his mind. He saw me as soon as I entered the kitchen. His lips twitched, a knowing look flashing across his face. I forced a smile. "Morning," I said, grabbing a mug. "Morning," he replied, voice smooth like butter. He didn't say anything else, but I saw the gleam in his eye. It made my heart race. I quickly turned away, pretending to focus on pouring coffee. By the time Miles and Layla joined us, the atmosphere in the cabin was thick with something unspoken. But we all carried on. Small talk, light jokes. It was like nothing had happened. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it had. By the time breakfast was over and we all headed out for a hike, the tension between me and Devin was palpable. Miles was all smiles, talking about how great the fresh air was, how nice it felt to get away from the city. Layla was listening intently, nodding along with everything he said. I could tell she was a bit distracted, though. Her eyes kept flicking between me and Devin. I noticed it too. There was something between us now, but I couldn't quite name it. Or maybe I didn't want to name it. If I did, it meant I'd have to face the truth. When we reached a clearing, Devin walked ahead, stepping off the path toward a nearby rock formation. Miles was taking his time, helping Layla over some uneven ground. That's when Devin stopped, turned, and beckoned me with a single finger. I knew exactly what it meant. Without thinking, my feet carried me toward him. I tried to act casual, tried to act like I didn't have 1,000 thoughts running through my head. When I reached him, Devin gave me a half smile, as though everything was just a game. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded, but didn't speak. What could I say? Everything I wanted was here in front of me, in this man who knew every part of me before I even had a chance to say it aloud. Devin leaned in, brushing his lips against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. "We don't have to hide, you know," he whispered. "It's just us, here, no one else." I didn't say anything, but when his hand brushed mine, it felt like a spark had been ignited again. He was right. It didn't have to be hidden. It didn't have to be a secret. Not if I didn't want it to be. Before I knew it, my hand was in his. His thumb traced over the back of my fingers, slow, deliberate, sending waves of heat through me. Devin, I said softly, trying to pull my hand away, but he wouldn't let me. He moved closer, his other hand brushing against my waist, pulling me just enough so I could feel the heat of his body. Don't pull away, he murmured, his lips brushing against my neck. I've waited too long for this. That was the moment everything else faded. My mind went blank. All that was left was the pull of his body, the way he moved against mine, the way his lips followed the curve of my neck. I didn't stop him. We kissed. Soft at first, then deeper, harder. I felt his hands move over me, caressing, touching, exploring as if he'd memorized every inch of my skin. There was no hesitation, no guilt. I was lost in the moment. The way his touch felt like it belonged, the way his lips fit so perfectly against mine. Then it hit me, the reality of the situation. What was I doing? I pulled back, breathless, my heart pounding. Devin didn't push. He just stood there, his eyes dark, waiting for me to say something. But all I could do was look at him. This wasn't a dream, it was real. I was really doing this, and I wasn't sure what came next. I wasn't sure what would happen when we went back to the cabin, when Miles asked why I'd been gone for so long, when Layla caught on, when everything came crashing down. But in that moment, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was the heat between us, the way his lips felt on mine, the way he made me forget everything else. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat. My heart was racing, my mind spinning. The night had been a blur, and I couldn't remember much after that kiss. All I knew was that it felt too real, too electric. And now, with the morning sun creeping through the window, it felt like the weight of what I had done was sinking in. Devin. I rolled over to my side, glancing at Miles still asleep beside me. His steady, rhythmic breathing was a reminder of everything I was about to lose. The guilt gnawed at me, but I couldn't push away the feeling of desire that lingered in my body. That kiss, no, that touch, had set something off inside me, something that I didn't know how to control. I slipped out of bed quietly, trying not to wake him, and made my way to the bathroom. As I splashed cold water on my face, the reality of the situation hit me. I'd crossed a line I wasn't sure I could return from. I thought about what Devin had said, how he had promised that we didn't have to hide. Was that what I wanted? Was I ready to throw away everything for one taste of something I knew I shouldn't have? I stared at myself in the mirror. Was I really this person now? Was I really going to cheat on my husband with the man I'd known for years? I didn't have answers, but what I did know was that the spark I'd felt with Devin the night before wasn't just a passing moment. It was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore. I heard movement behind me, and when I turned, I saw Miles standing in the doorway of the bathroom, looking at me with those eyes that had always been so full of trust. "Hey, you all right?" he asked softly. I forced a smile, turning away from the mirror. "Yeah, just needed a minute." He stepped closer, his hand brushing against my shoulder in a comforting gesture. "You sure? You've been a little quiet since yesterday." "I'm fine," I replied, my voice a little too high-pitched. I could hear the nervousness in it, and I knew he could too. But Miles wasn't the type to question me. He wasn't suspicious by nature. He trusted me, and right now, that trust felt like a weight on my chest. He nodded, giving me a brief smile before he left to go downstairs. As I watched him walk away, the thought of Devin flashed through my mind. What if I went to see him today? What if I gave in and let everything happen? I didn't know how much longer I could pretend to be the woman I used to be. The woman who loved her husband, who stayed loyal no matter what. The woman who didn't crave the touch of another man. The days blended together in the retreat, but I could feel the undercurrent of tension growing stronger. Devin and I exchanged glances that spoke volumes, and when no one was looking, he'd get closer, his touch lingering just a little too long, his smile just a little too knowing. But it wasn't until later that night, when everyone else was gathered around the fire pit, that I found myself alone with him again. We had made small talk earlier, but there was something different in the air now. It was thick with anticipation, the kind of energy that electrified the space between us. Devon was sitting on one of the logs by the fire, his arm resting casually on the back of the chair. He looked up at me as I approached, his lips curving into a smile. "Come sit," he said in that voice that always made my pulse quicken. I hesitated for a moment, looking around to make sure no one was watching, but then I stepped closer. "I thought we agreed on no more distractions," I whispered, sitting down beside him. Devon chuckled, low and smooth. "I think that's impossible when you look at me like that." I felt my cheeks flush, my heart thudding in my chest. Was I really about to do this? Was I about to lose myself completely? Before I could stop myself, I leaned in closer. His scent wrapped around me, intoxicating and familiar. He didn't move at first, just let me come to him. And when our lips met again, it was like all the walls I'd built up came crashing down. The kiss deepened, slow at first, then harder, urgent, as if our bodies knew what our minds were too afraid to admit. My hand slid over his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath his shirt. He responded instantly, his hand moving to my waist, pulling me closer. I didn't think about what I was doing anymore. I didn't care. All that mattered was the heat between us, the hunger that had been building since the moment we met again. I heard the sound of footsteps in the distance, but they didn't matter. They couldn't stop us. Not now. Not when everything felt so right. His hand slipped under my shirt, his fingers brushing against my skin, sending a wave of heat through me. I gasped, pulling back for just a second, but he followed, kissing me even harder. And then, in one swift move, he was lifting me onto his lap, our bodies pressed together, the heat of him against me. The fire crackled behind us, but it was nothing compared to the flames inside me. I was lost in him, lost in the way he kissed me, in the way his hands moved over my body. There were no words, only the sensation of his touch, the overwhelming desire that was too strong to fight. Then, as quickly as it had started, we heard a voice, Layla's voice, calling from across the yard. Devon pulled back, and for a moment, we just stared at each other, breathless, caught in the whirlwind of what we'd just done. But reality hit hard, and I knew we had to stop. We couldn't go any further. Not here. Not now. But as I stood up, my body trembling, Devon grabbed my wrist gently, holding me in place. "Don't walk away," he whispered. "Not yet." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "I can't," I breathed, looking over my shoulder toward the house. "I'm not asking you to, but I'm not done with you. Not by a long shot." The days dragged on, each one a delicate dance of tension and restraint. Miles and I spent our time exploring the retreat's trails, enjoying the peace of nature, but I couldn't shake the memory of what had happened between Devon and me. Every time I saw him, my pulse quickened, my body reacting without my permission. The guilt was suffocating, but so was the desire. It felt like I was walking a razor's edge, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay on the right side. I watched as Miles laughed with everyone, his easy smile and infectious energy drawing people in. He was everything I needed, everything I had once wanted. But now, as I watched him, I couldn't ignore the emptiness I felt inside. There was something missing. And I knew deep down it was Devon I was missing, the man who had stirred something in me I hadn't felt in years, the man who made me feel alive. Devon and I continued to share stolen moments, a touch here, a whisper there. It was as if we were both living in this shared fantasy, pretending that nothing else mattered. But I could feel it, each glance. Each subtle interaction was pulling us further and further from the edge. We were spiraling, and I didn't know how to stop it. On the third night after dinner, everyone gathered around the fire again. This time, the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. Miles was chatting with Layla, and I couldn't help but notice how Devon's eyes lingered on me from across the fire. His gaze was intense, almost possessive, and it made my heart race. I excused myself to go inside the cabin, hoping to get a moment alone. But as soon as I stepped inside, I heard the soft click of the door behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "Are you avoiding me?" Devon's voice was low, almost teasing. I felt my breath catch in my throat. There was no denying it now. This thing between us, it was real. It was happening. "I'm not avoiding you," I replied, my voice trembling slightly despite myself. "I just need some space to think." "Think about what?" he asked, stepping closer. "Think about how you're going to tell Miles the truth?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The thought of telling Miles, that would destroy everything. The life I'd built, the trust we'd shared, all gone in an instant. "Listen," Devon continued, his voice softening. "I know this isn't easy, but we both know what we feel for each other, and I can't keep pretending like nothing's happening between us." I turned to face him, my back pressed against the cabin wall. I could feel the heat of his body, the way he radiated confidence, desire, and something else I couldn't quite name, but it was too much, too overwhelming. I needed to get away from him before I lost myself entirely. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm married. I love my husband." "But do you really love him?" Devon asked, his hand coming to rest on my cheek. His touch was so gentle, but the spark between us was undeniable. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to lean into him. I do love him," I said, though my words felt empty. "But what we have? It's different. I don't know how to explain it." "You don't have to explain it," he murmured, leaning in, his lips brushing against my ear. "Just feel it. Let go, just for a moment." And I did. I let go. In that moment, everything else faded away. It was just him and me, two people connected in a way I couldn't describe, lost in the intensity of the moment. Devon's lips found mine again, his kiss hot and urgent, pushing me further into this forbidden world. I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. My hands moved to his chest, feeling the heat of his skin beneath his shirt, and I couldn't help but moan as he deepened the kiss. It was like something inside me had been waiting for this moment when I could finally let go of all the restraints I'd placed on myself. For so long, I'd been the good wife, the loyal partner. But now, in the arms of Devon, I was someone else, someone free. He pulled me closer, his hand sliding to the small of my back, and I felt the heat of his body against mine, every inch of him igniting a fire inside me that I didn't know how to control. His hands roamed, pulling me closer, and I gasped as I felt his desire pressing against me. But before I could get lost in him completely, I heard a noise, a knock on the door. Miles. I pulled away, my breath ragged, panic setting in. Devon stepped back, his expression a mix of frustration and longing. "I have to go," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Don't," Devon said, his voice almost pleading. "Don't run from this, not anymore." But I didn't have a choice. I couldn't do this. I couldn't let myself destroy everything for a moment of passion. I quickly opened the door to find Miles standing there, a concerned look on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed as he glanced between me and Devon. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just getting some fresh air." Miles seemed to buy it, and he smiled, though I could see the worry in his eyes. "You sure?" "We're all by the fire waiting for you." I hesitated, glancing back at Devon, who was standing silently behind me. The tension was thick, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. But finally, I nodded. "Yeah, I'll be right there." I stepped out, forcing my thoughts back to the fire, back to the people who trusted me. But as I walked away, I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. The weight of the days that followed felt heavier with each passing hour. Miles was more attentive, more loving, and it only made the guilt more unbearable. I couldn't look at him without feeling a pang in my chest, an ache that wouldn't go away. He deserved better than this. He deserved better than me, caught in a web of lies, wrapped in a deceit that I couldn't undo. I tried to act normal, to slip back into the role of the loving wife, but it was impossible. Every time I laid eyes on Devon, I felt a fire ignite inside me that I couldn't extinguish. He was everywhere I turned. His presence haunted me, consumed me, made it impossible to think straight. The night after that moment in the cabin, I found myself tossing and turning in bed, unable to sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of him. The way his lips felt against mine, the way his body had pressed against mine in that stolen moment. It wasn't just sex, it was more than that. It was connection, raw and undeniable. Miles slept beside me, oblivious to the storm that was brewing within me. I could hear his steady breathing, the soft rise and fall of his chest, and it made me feel even more like a liar. He was so good to me, so devoted, and here I was, ready to throw it all away for a man who might never care for me the way I needed. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the guilt, but it was no use. It was there, gnawing at the back of my mind, taunting me, pulling me back to Devon. The next day, we all went for a hike. Miles was in high spirits, talking about the trails he wanted to explore, and Layla and Devon were right there with him, laughing and joking as we made our way through the woods. But all I could think about was the quiet moments I'd shared with Devon in the past few days. Every touch, every glance, every word had been a promise that we weren't finished, that we couldn't be. We reached the top of the hill where we stopped to take in the view. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape, but it was the tension between Devon and me that filled the air. I felt his eyes on me even when I wasn't looking. His presence was magnetic, drawing me in, making me feel alive in ways I didn't understand, but with each passing second, the reality of what I was doing, the betrayal, the lies, the inevitable heartbreak pressed harder on my chest. "Isn't this amazing?" Miles said, breaking my thoughts as he stood next to me, his arm casually draped around my shoulders. I smiled weakly, trying to play the part of the happy wife. "Yeah, it's beautiful." "Yeah, it's great," Devon added from behind me, his voice steady, but there was something in his tone that made my heart race. I turned to face him, and our eyes locked for a brief moment. It was electric, that look. It spoke volumes, words we weren't saying, emotions we weren't acknowledging. But in that moment, the reality was clear. This couldn't last forever. One of us would have to break. After a few more moments, we started heading back down the trail. Miles and Layla chatted ahead, and I found myself slowing my pace, allowing Devon to fall in step beside me. He didn't waste any time. "I can't stop thinking about you," he murmured, his voice low but urgent. I swallowed hard, my heart racing in my chest. "We can't keep doing this." "But we can," he whispered. "We're doing it now. Every touch, every look. It's happening." "I'm married," I said, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. "I love my husband. You love him, but you want me." His voice was raw, filled with a hunger I couldn't ignore. "You've always wanted me. Since college, right?" I stiffened at the mention of our past. The history between us was complicated. Too many unspoken words, too many years of longing. The truth was, I had always wanted Devon. I'd always carried that secret crush, the one that had never quite gone away. And now here we were, finally giving in to something neither of us could stop. "Don't," I said, my voice strained. "We can't do this." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The connection was there, undeniable and powerful. I could feel it in every inch of my body, in every beat of my heart. Devon was the one I wanted, and I was terrified of what that meant. We walked in silence for a few moments, and I could feel the tension building between us, thick and palpable. I knew the truth now. I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend this wasn't happening anymore. We were in this together, for better or for worse, and there was no way out. When we reached the cabin, I made a beeline for the door, eager to escape the suffocating tension between Devin and me. But as I opened it, I felt a hand on my arm. "Please," Devin said, his voice desperate. "Let me in." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to say no, to push him away, but I couldn't. The desire was too strong. The pull between us was magnetic. "Not here," I whispered, looking over my shoulder to make sure no one was around. "Not now." Devin nodded, his eyes dark with desire, and I knew he was only going to wait for the right moment. We both were. As I stepped inside, I looked over at Miles, sitting on the couch, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. He smiled, his face full of warmth, and I smiled back, though it didn't reach my eyes. I was torn, caught between the man I had married and the man I couldn't forget. That night, I lay in bed, the silence between me and Miles deafening. I wanted to reach out to him, to hold him, but all I could think about was Devin, and I hated myself for it. I closed my eyes, praying for strength, but all I found was more confusion, more longing. The line between right and wrong had blurred, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending. Vault Seekers, the tension has reached its peak. What happens next? Will the truth come out, or will it stay buried? Like this video if you're hooked, subscribe to Top Stories Vault, and turn on notifications for the next VO. You don't want to miss the explosive conclusion. Let us know in the comments. How long would you stay in a marriage when your heart is elsewhere? Would you keep fighting for it, or give in to temptation?